Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery. Excuse me while I get comfortable. Um, Today is one of my favorite topics. I know I say that all the time, but having this conversation with my very wonderful esteemed guest, Dr. Melissa, makes it even more interesting and intriguing. But, emotional intelligence being our topic of conversation is something that a lot of people overlook or think that they have slash only they really don't have a completeness with it. And a lot of that's because there's not a complete understanding of what really creates emotional intelligence for people. So gaining this knowledge and creating a space where we can improve, grow, change, shift more of our personal confidence inside of this is super important. So before I bring Miss Melissa in here with us, I thought, well, gosh, let's define emotional intelligence for everybody, just so that they get like the short version, right? So emotional intelligence is the ability to monitor one's own and other people's emotions, to discriminate between different emotions and label them appropriately, and to use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior. So we're talking impulse control, we're talking distress tolerance, emotion regulation, just this really deep self-awareness, again, the self-regulation, social skills, empathy, and motivation. So there's a lot that goes into this, and it's an amazing journey. So anyway, Dr. Melissa, welcome.
Thank
I
you.
love having you here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back, Trisha.
Thanks. I know we had, a little chat before we started, but, I know I could talk for hours about my journey in cultivating, the emotional intelligence to the level I'm at now, 10 years into this awesome lifestyle that I've created for myself. But people like to hear from other people. So, I wanted you to share, your personal and professional journey with emotional intelligence and how it serves you in your personal life and your professional life.
Sure. So for me, emotional intelligence has been a key part of my life for a very long time, probably even before it was, let's say, discovered. Even it's been out there. But, somebody writes a book about it and then, oh, everybody talks about it. So emotional intelligence, as when I started the workforce, outside of babysitting, let's qualify that. So, because I did start doing that young, and even that actually played a role with when you're taking care of those kiddos. But when I started the workforce when I was 16 years old, going into that workforce and being able to understand who I am and being able to understand who my employer is and my clients are at the time, or the patrons that are coming in. When you walk in or you're talking to somebody, and this, I go all the way back to there, because now cell phones were around, but not quite as popular as today. But I want to use the illustration because somebody comes in to you. So I worked in a service industry. I still work in a service industry. It was just a different line of service. But somebody comes in and is talking to you, and you are talking to them, or you're not paying attention to them. So, okay, so I was a receptionist. So I was sat down. They came in and asked me questions. Now, if I started looking down and doing this while they're talking to me, that doesn't prove that I'm paying very close attention to my emotional intelligence, their emotional intelligence, because I'm ignoring them. That's what they're thinking. I may be listening, but no, I'm ignoring them. And let's fast forward to the cell phone age. Your best friend is talking to you and she's telling you the story about her child and all of these great things, or she's asking you a question about how, you've already been there or done that. And she wants to know, and you sit there and you're like, okay, tell me. And then you're like,
Right.
you're not paying any attention to her. And she feels like you're not listening. You might be listening, but you're not actively listening. And this is all part of emotional intelligence. And I bring that story from way back into the current, because in my line of work, I didn't learn quite early enough on, because I wasn't always eye contact to start with, because I was paying attention, but I could multitask and do a couple of things. But the emotional intelligence in the room was not perceived that way. And so I learned at a very young age to actively listen when somebody's talking to you. If you need to look something up, then you wait for them to finish and then you go look it up. So we fast forward to where I'm at professionally now as a doctor of pharmacy. People give me things, so I may have to take notes as I'm going through their assessment, or they're talking to me. My ears perk up when somebody just talks and I can hear them or in a room and I hear medications or something. They'll say a certain medication or a certain disease state and my ears are like popped up. But I'm talking to somebody here, so I need to give my full attention here. And that is the emotional intelligence of paying attention to knowing that I need to focus. And when I'm talking to Trisha, she's going to feel that I hear her and that I see her. And if I don't be distracted, then I'm actually going to probably get more out of that conversation than me trying to listen over here to this or listen over here to that. So when I'm doing professional interviews with my clients, I'm listening to them, I'm paying attention. I might jot a few notes down, but I'm not going to do any major things. I jot those notes down to maybe help me ask further questions, because that's where we need to go. But I'm paying actively attention, actively listening. So that's a huge key piece. And I want to say that if you haven't learned to put your cell phone down when you're talking to your spouse or your children or your best friend, then that's step number one. Start with that.
Yes. Wow. I love that. It's not funny, but my husband and I kind of ping pong off of each other in that same space. Like it's either my turn to not feel like he's hearing me or his turn to feel like I'm not hearing him. Just last night, we were hanging out with the dogs and watching some TV. But we were, it's a tail end. I think I might have even just turned it off, but I was, looking at my phone, but listening to what was going on outside, because he had asked me about, he said, what's that? And I'm like, and I smiled and anyway, it lost in translation. He thought I was smiling at what was going on in my phone, and I smiled and I'm like, it's a dog, because it was clearly a dog, but the thing is it was a pack of coyotes, right? So it was the leader. And so, but he thought I was smiling at my phone and not really he's like, like you didn't answer. And I'm like, and he was right. I was distracted, but I did hear him, but I needed to get up and go outside and hear that it was actually a full thing. So I think, it's a very important thing to talk about, because our EQ does 100% affect our relationships. It affects our mental health, and it affects our physical health, and it affects our work performance. But what I'm hearing that I love so much that you're bringing in here is that, and if we talk about the 4 branches of EQ, right? Perceiving emotions, which is, understanding emotions and nonverbal signs or signals, so that body language. But, if we're not looking at people and we're not actively listening, where we're actually inquiring for a deeper level of understanding, like, wow, I heard that you said this, is it accurate? Right now, we've we've stepped into this deeper space. Now we've made an emotional connection with the person that we're listening to, because we're able to say, I hear you, I see you, I'm feeling you, right? And I care enough to clarify that I'm perceiving whatever it is that you're meaning, for me to hear correctly, so that I can actually respond to the emotions and respond appropriately versus just what I think, right? Because our intellectual intelligence might kick in, and that's completely different. That helps us with our studying, our learning, right? Like, we use our intellectual intelligence a whole lot. I know I do in work, and I know you do, but the EQ is what helps us deal with the stress, manage our emotions, and really just, create a better connectivity in our relationships.
Exactly. Well, and so 90%, I believe, is the statistic. 90% of our language is nonverbal. And so if we are not actively listening, not actively paying attention and using our EQ correctly, then we may miss some of those cues, because my facial expression, I mean, I could just have a frown come up and you wouldn't even notice it if you were looking down at your phone. Or if you walk into a room, or you walk in and you see somebody with their arms crossed like this, what is your first sign? You're like, they're closed off. They're not interested. Why would I even appropriately talk to them? Now, there's a couple of different things. Yes, most of the times it means leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. But some people just naturally have their arms like that. But it's those cues, and knowing that your emotional intelligence, because you've learned this with your IQ, you can pick up on these subtle signs.